Before diving into this incredible story, consider subscribing to the channel and hitting the bell. Every story here has something to say, and you won't want to miss a single one. Black manager rejected at bank. 10 minutes later, she fires the entire team. In the financial district of Charlotte, North Carolina's financial capital, glass towers rise like promises of the future, but some still harbor vestiges of a frozen past. Among them, a majestic building sits at the corner of Tryon Street and 4th Avenue, a building of tinted glass and brushed steel, housing the main branch of First Southern Bank. It's a reputable, long-standing bank, almost legendary in the region. Financial newspapers regularly praise its solidity and conservative management. But inside the bank, those who work there know that behind the polite smiles of the managers and the polished leather chairs in the meeting rooms, a silent culture of exclusion persists. Here, decisions have been made by the same types of people for decades. White men in gray suits, who have graduated from the same universities, the same country clubs, the same exclusive circles. That morning, daylight slid across the windows like a blade across glass, and the bank lobby seemed immersed in an almost religious calm. The decorative plants were clipped to the millimeter, the air conditioning diffused a calculated coolness, and the subtle scent of leather and glossy paper wafted through the space. The muffled rustle of shoes, the controlled murmurs of employees, the discreet laughter of wealthy clients. Everything exuded a kind of silent, almost solemn power. And then, at exactly 9:06, the main door opened. A female figure crossed the threshold. Instantly, she seemed to break the frozen balance of the setting. Madison L. Carter. Black, elegant, formidably charismatic. She walked with a calm assurance, a natural authority. Her tailored cream suit outlined her slender figure, while her black patent leather pumps echoed softly on the marble lobby. In her left hand, she carried a dark brown leather briefcase, understated, yet clearly luxurious. Her face, both gentle and determined, was that of a woman who knew exactly who she was. A woman who had nothing left to prove. At 42, Madison wasn't just the head of Carter Equity Holdings, an independent financial group that had built its influence by reinvesting in historically neglected neighborhoods in the American Southeast. She had become a respected figure in business circles, mentored by some of the country's biggest investors, decorated for her work in economic inclusion, and nicknamed in Forbes, the strategist with a heart of steel and an elephant's memory. But what the employees at First Southern Bank didn't know, and it would cost them dearly, was that Madison Carter hadn't just come in as a customer that day. His arrival marked the final step in a complex negotiation and restructuring process that had begun 9 months earlier between the bank's senior management and his own company. Carter Equity Holdings, a rapidly growing company, had acquired several strategic stakes in targeted branches within the banking network. That morning, Madison had just finalized the acquisition of this Central Charlotte branch. She wasn't there to talk to a counselor. She wasn't there to open an account. She came to take possession of a place where, until then, she would not even have been greeted properly. And in just a few minutes, what some took to be an intrusion would turn into a bitter lesson in humility and reverse power. Barely does Madison walk through the door that the atmosphere would change. It wasn't so much that she wanted attention, she didn't need it, but rather that her presence naturally commanded respect. Yet, in this lobby of the First Southern Bank, that respect wasn't going to be granted. Not yet. The white marble floor, smooth as a sheet of ice, reflected the cold light from the modern chandeliers hanging from the ceiling. Madison walked with measured steps, her perfectly tailored cream suit caressing her hips with every movement. Her black patent pumps, shiny as a mirror, clicked gently on the tiles in a regular, almost ceremonial rhythm. On her arm, her ivory leather Givenchy bag contrasted with the cool hues of the space, like a signature of quiet refinement. Eyes turned, furtive, sometimes insistent. Some employees paused their discussion. Customers sitting in the lounge area, dressed in tweed or silk, looked up without even concealing their curiosity. A black woman, alone, dressed with such grace and presence in such a codified place. It was enough to arouse suspicion, judgment, and unspoken irritation. Madison, however, remained impassive. She was no stranger to this kind of welcome, or rather, this lack thereof. She'd known it since her youth. She knew exactly what her clothes triggered, what her skin color erased in the eyes of some. But she never wavered. Not today. Especially not today. She calmly approached the reception desk. Heather, a white woman in her 20s, nervously smoothed her blonde locks behind her ear as she typed on her keyboard. Her makeup was neat, but her eyes were dry and hurried. She barely looked up when Madison stood in front of her. "Can I help you?" she said, in a mechanical, almost irritated tone, with no real intention of helping. Madison smiled at him politely. "Yes, I have an appointment with Mr. Thompson, the branch manager. My name is Madison Carter." Heather typed quickly on her keyboard. A few seconds passed. Then she frowned and looked skeptically at Madison. "I don't see any appointments with that name." The tone was sharp, almost accusatory, as if the idea of a woman like Madison going on a date with the director seemed impossible or inappropriate to him. Madison, without losing her composure, took her phone out of her bag and showed Heather the screen. An email clearly appeared on it, with the time, date, and Charles Thompson's email signature. "It's confirmed by email. You can check with him directly." Heather glanced quickly at the screen, but didn't touch the phone. Instead of making a call or asking for confirmation, she rested her gaze on Madison, a gaze that moved slowly down from her face to her shoes. It was an inspection, a silent judgment. Then she breathed dryly. "Madam, this lobby is reserved for premium customers. If you would like to open an account, our annex is 2 blocks away." These words, spoken in a honeyed but sharp tone, fell like a slap. There was no mistake in the email. There was no doubt about the appointment. It wasn't a question of protocol or organization. It was a matter of presumption and prejudice. Heather's words were carefully coded in banking courtesy, but the intention was clear. "You don't look like you belong here." Madison held his gaze without blinking. A tense silence fell. At that moment, a councilwoman, dressed in an impeccable charcoal suit, walked past Madison. She pretended not to see her and deliberately brushed past her, as if to signal her territory. Then, in a loud voice, meant for everyone to hear, she said, "Another one who thinks she's important." Madison took a deep breath. Her shoulders straightened, her gaze remaining imperturbably calm, almost icy. She didn't respond to the provocation, not this time, not in front of those contemptuous faces. She knew that strength lay not in the heat of anger, but in self-control. Without a word, she quietly moved away from the reception desk, her gait still elegant and assured. Arriving in a discreet corner of the lobby, she took out her phone and dialed a number. "Ethan? Yes, it's me. I'm here, and there's a problem. Yes, I'm going to have to deal with this immediately. Send the documents to the branch. Hurry." She hung up, then, with an almost disconcerting serenity, sat down in an armchair near the entrance. Her hands rested calmly on her knees, but beneath this apparent tranquility, her mind was racing. She analyzed, anticipating every move, every word that might follow. Around her, the hushed murmur of customers continued, still unaware of the shockwave that would soon unfold. 10 minutes passed. 10 minutes during which time seemed to stand still, as if the air itself were holding its breath. Then, suddenly, the glass doors of the lobby burst open with a crash, breaking the hushed calm. All eyes turned toward the entrance. A man entered, imposing, well into his 50s, dark-skinned, with a dignified and confident bearing. Behind him, 2 men in dark suits followed, as did an elegant woman carrying a black leather briefcase. It was Ethan Wallace, the chairman of the merger board, a respected figure in the financial world, a former colleague and mentor of Madison, known for his rigor and intransigence. Moments later, branch manager Charles Thompson appeared running into the lobby, looking nervous and drawn. He tried to catch Madison's eye, clearly caught off guard. "Dr. Carter, I'm sorry, I wasn't informed of your arrival." Madison stood slowly, her piercing gaze sweeping the room. She then turned to Heather and the 2 other employees who had shared in her humiliation. Silence fell like a guillotine in the lobby. Even the customers stopped what they were doing, captivated by the solemn moment. "I'm here not just as a customer," Madison began, her voice clear and firm, "but as the majority owner." She then elegantly opened her bag and took out several carefully arranged documents, contracts, property deeds, and other official papers, all signed, stamped, and validated by the legal and financial authorities. "Today, we are finalizing the takeover of this First Southern Bank branch by Carter Equity Holdings." She paused, scanning the room, her gaze heavy with meaning. This building, this hall, these offices now belong to me. The faces that had been haughty and contemptuous just a few minutes earlier suddenly paled. A chilly breath seemed to blow through the room. One could almost hear the dull echo of their certainties crumbling. Heather looked away, biting her lower lip, as the counselor who had humiliated her clenched her fists, silent. Charles Thompson, for his part, lowered his head, unable to meet the gaze of the one he had underestimated. In that suspended moment, Madison knew the balance had shifted, and that never again, in this hall, would she be ignored. Heather, unsettled, felt the words escape her. Her voice trembled slightly, stammering. I didn't know. It was a misunderstanding. I didn't mean to. But Madison looked at her, implacable, with a dignity that left no room for apology. Her dark gaze pierced Heather's soul, weighing every syllable of her answer. You humiliated me, Madison said, her voice calm but heavy with gravity. Not because you didn't know who I was. No, you humiliated me because, from the first moment, you judged that I couldn't be anyone. Heather looked away, her face red with shame and confusion, as the silence grew heavier around them. Madison turned slowly to Mr. Thompson, the director, who seemed caught in his own surprise. I have a clear vision for this branch. A vision of excellence, diversity, and respect. His voice rose, calm but firm, imbued with undeniable authority. I will no longer tolerate any form of discrimination in this establishment. Then, with solemn slowness, she added, as of today, this team is no longer part of our future. A murmur ran through the room. The targeted employees exchanged worried glances. Some began to gather their belongings. Others, petrified, seemed not to understand what had just happened to them. Charles Thompson, the director, bowed his head in defeat, unable to argue. In the queue, a well-dressed, wise-looking, middle-aged customer whispered emotionally, "This is the first time I have seen justice be so clear, so straightforward." Around them, others nodded silently. The entire room seemed to breathe a new air, that of change, that of a promise finally kept. Madison, standing as still as a marble statue, felt the weight of this historic moment. She had not only claimed her due, but opened the door to a future where dignity would never again be an option. Within weeks, the First Southern Bank branch in Charlotte underwent a dramatic transformation under the visionary leadership of Madison Carter. Gone were the days of lukewarm conservatism and unspoken prejudices. Madison hired a team representative of the city's and country's diversity. She brought in advisors with diverse backgrounds and different socioeconomic backgrounds, ensuring a genuine understanding of clients' diverse needs. Women entrepreneurs, recent graduates from often marginalized communities, and experts passionate about responsible finance were all recruited with care and enthusiasm. She launched a new investment department specifically dedicated to small businesses run by women and minorities, a sector long neglected by major financial institutions. This department quickly became a hotbed of talent, a launching pad for numerous local initiatives, supporting economic growth and job creation. At the same time, Madison implemented an innovative financial mentoring program for young people in the community, particularly those from disadvantaged neighborhoods. Workshops, personalized coaching, and training sessions on money management, investing, and entrepreneurship were designed to give young people the essential keys to financial independence. The story of this transformation quickly became a buzzword. Local and then national media outlets picked up on this success story. Headlines abounded. From ignored customer to bold owner. A bank reinvents itself thanks to a Black woman with exemplary leadership. Madison Carter, the quiet revolution of a century-old institution. Madison appeared on prestigious television shows, national radio stations, and at international conferences. She impressed everywhere with her unwavering composure, quiet authority, and clear vision of leadership based on respect, inclusion, and excellence. A year later, the results were telling. The branch was breaking all records for customer satisfaction, financial product innovation, and economic performance. It had become a model to follow, a vibrant example that change was possible and profitable. As for Heather, the young receptionist who once refused to acknowledge Madison, she had applied elsewhere, but her recommendations were sorely lacking. Word of her attitude had spread around town, impacting her career. Madison, for her part, continued her ascent. From her light-filled, glass-fronted office, a frame hung on the wall, a quote that had guided her every step in this battle. Revenge is loud, but quiet dignity builds empires.